Hello, hello. Today we're going to be going through my favorite reads of 2025. So, first off, we have January. How I sort of organized the books generally is that anything that had more than 5 stars, I went 5 stars only. Anything that had less than that, I chose my favorite 4 stars to add in. There are some that only had 4 stars in those months, but I tried to keep it around, between 5 and 10-ish books for every month, just to make it a little easier. So for January, I chose 2 books from the Kate Daniels series by Ilona Andrews because those were both 4-star reads and I really, really enjoyed them. Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baltree, Belladonna by Adeline Grace, Fiends and Festivals by S. Usher Evans, and Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. And my favorite was Butcher and Blackbird. Then we get to February. I had a couple of romances this month. Cruel Winter with You and If Only You by Chloe Leese were both romances, as well as A Ship of Bones and Teeth by Karina Hale. Might be Hale. A Ship of Bones and Teeth is a dark romance, a dark retelling of sort of like a Little Mermaid-esque story, but not exactly. It's like after the fairy tale. Then we had Cress, which was part of the Lunar Chronicles, which I finished up this year for the most part, other than one sort of mini book of novellas, which I'm going to read next year. Loved that series. And then Dark Fever, which is the first one in the Fever novels by Karen Marie Moning. Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell, is a nonfiction. And then we had a thriller, The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. And my favorite for the month was A Ship of Bones and Teeth. I adored this book. It is not for everyone though. Definitely read the trigger warnings. I loved it, but it is not for everyone. So I'll put that out there. March. I did not have as many books for March, or I believe for April either. So for March, I chose Once Upon a Broken Heart, which is the first of that series as well, by Stephanie Garber. Check and Mate, which is a standalone young adult romance by Ali Hazelwood. 2 books from Laura Olympus. I think I'm on book number 8. I want to finish that series up in 2026. And then Abby Jimenez's Yours Truly, another romance, and Invisible Women, which is by Carolyn Criado Perez, and it is a nonfiction talking about data biases, specifically sort of against women and people who are not men generally. But I really liked it. It has a lot of data in it, so I will likely have to read it a second time to like get everything into my brain to stay. But it is a bit of a lengthy read. Very good read though if you are interested in data or just figuring out how designing a world for men has affected life for everyone, potentially in negative ways or sometimes in neutral ways, but generally not taking everyone into account as being a negative influence for all. And my favorite was Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. April, like I said, I did not do a ton of reading in March and April. I don't know why. I think I was just in a major slump. So in April, I chose the young adult book by Christy Boyce, Dating and Dragons. I do intend to read, I think, the second one in this series in 2026. Another Abby Jimenez romance, Part of Your World. And then a Sarah Adams romance, contemporary for all of these romances, by the way, The Rule Book. And then we get into a young adult sapphic romance slash fairy tale retelling by Heather Walter, Malice. It is part of a duology. I did like Malice better than its sequel, but I enjoyed the story overall. So for April, I chose Malice by Heather Walter. May, another short month when it came to the reads. And again, these are only 4s and 5s, but generally March, April, May had a significantly shorter amount of reading that I was doing in each of those months. So that was right before I started recording, right before I started Herkyed. So I guess it was like the calm before the storm of, hello, a million books a month. So May, I finished the Scholomance series. I read The Last Graduate and The Golden Enclaves, and both of those were phenomenal. I liked The Golden Enclaves the least of the books in this series in general, but I don't think it was a bad book at all. It just was not my favorite of the series. I didn't love the end. I was, no, we need some more. But anyways, it was good. I liked it. So then we get to Holly Jackson. Oh, that was obviously Scolomance's Naomi Novik. Sorry. Holly Jackson's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder was my next one. And then The Fall Risk, another Abby Jimenez. For May, I ended up choosing The Golden Enclaves. I know I said it was my least favorite, but it was a really, really good book. And it wrapped the series up really nicely. So I ended up deciding, even though it was my least favorite of the series, it was my favorite book of that month. So I know that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but when I was going through it in my brain, I was like, no, there's a lot of character growth going on. And even if I didn't like everything about it, it made sense and it just clicked and it deserves that spot. So I gave it the spot. June, we got a little bit more in this month. The Night Circus by Eric Morgenstern was a fabulous book that was recommended to me by a friend. Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think everyone knows that at this point. So I went ahead and read that one. The Rise and Fall of Dodo was a suggestion of my husband, and I knew nothing going into this one. It is a long book, but it is phenomenal. I adored it. Essentially, you have time traveling witches, and the government somehow gets involved, and there's this whole plot and things going on in multiple time periods at the same time. Phenomenal. I am going to read the next one next year. And then Brandon Weaver's The Ruinous Love Trilogy. I read Leather and Lark and Scythe and Sparrow in June. Then the classic by Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. And The Girl on the Walls by Meg Eden Kuyat is a middle grade / young adult book, I would say, with ghosts. It is a horror, but it is a younger horror book. It is really good. It does speak to trauma and neurodivergence, and I just really enjoyed it. All right, so June, The Girl on the Walls. July, this is where we start getting up into larger amounts of books again. So I do have 11 for several months in the next couple here. The Love Hypothesis and Deep End, both by Ali Hazelwood. Love Flushed and Not My Type by Evie Mitchell. Both of these are disability representation in romance, contemporary. I enjoyed them. I think Not My Type is my favorite of the two. It is right now, there are 3 books. I don't know if there's going to be a 4th. I feel like there is, just based on everything that is, who they're presenting and talking. You know how they're like, oh, these are all the people that are in the friend group, and you're like, okay, well, these people are all into groupings now, so you have this one left. So I think there's going to be one more. I'm hopeful because I really am enjoying these. Let's see, other romances, Lights Out, which is a dark romance. Then I got into some thrillers with Voices in the Snow by Darcy Coates and Good Half Gone by Taryn Fisher. Which were both really good, and they were recommended through a book club that I'm in. And then What Lies Beyond the Veil by Harper L. Woods and 10,000 Doors of January are both fantasy adventure-y, but completely different. Enjoyed both of those. I am going to read another Alex E. Harrow book, I believe January, February. I'm waiting to see when it'll come in from the library. So I'm really hoping that that book is going to be as good as the 10,000 Doors of January, because I could not put this one down. It was phenomenal. Well, I take it back. I did put it down because I had no choice, but then like as soon as I could, I picked it back up. Another Ilona Andrews book, White Hot, which is part of the Hidden Legacy series, and then Kills Well with Others, which adorable. If you haven't already read this series by Deanna Rayburn, essentially you have some retired, aged ladies who used to be assassins for the government. They don't say exactly which part of the government, it's just the agency, more or less. And they retire, and it doesn't go quite as planned. And so they go off on this adventure and have to kind of get back into the swing of things, back into their old ways of life. And it's really good. I loved it. All right, so July, I chose Not My Type. Okay, and August, I have 2 nonfictions in here. Word Slut, which is all about English language and feminism by Amanda Montell, and then Tia Leaving's memoir, A Well-Trained Wife. That one was very kind of difficult for me personally, but it was good. I rated it really, really well, really highly. I read the last of the All Access novels by Evie Mitchell that I talked about on the last page, or last month in July, Darn It All, which was cute, but not my favorite of that entire trilogy. The First Murderbot by Martha Wells, which is All Systems Red. And then we get into fantasy with Blood Fever by Karen Marie Moning, which is the second one in that series. We talked about the first one earlier with Dark Fever. Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, which is the second one in this series as well. We already talked about the first one earlier as well, Ninth House, Onyx Storm, and Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse, which I am definitely going to be reading the second one of that series. I've already requested it from my library. Very excited about that one. I've mentioned it before, so I'm not going to get into it too much, but very excited about a lot of books I read in the last half of the year. So, August, Trail of Lightning. Then we get to September. It's another 11 book. I actually started out with more than that. I had to limit it down because I was like, this was a really good reading month. So I reread A Deadly Education because I know I'd already finished the series a few months ago, but this was a really good read. I enjoyed it. And also it was a Aurelium sort of read. You had to read for the book club part of Aurelium. So I did reread it again, and it was phenomenal, just like the last time. Trial of the Sun Queen. This one I really liked. I rated it 4 stars, but the ending, I don't know how we're gonna see. I mean, you know it's gonna be that way, but we're gonna see how the next one goes before I decide for sure to finish the entire series. But I did like it. I just want to see where we're going before I commit fully. Howl's Moving Castle. I am working my way through all of the Studio Ghibli books and movies because I had never read or watched any of them. So this is one of the ones that I ended up right around the time when I started going through that kind of mini challenge. I haven't really been talking about it because it's not a challenge that's like out there. It's just one that I am doing for myself. I've got like a list of my priorities reads and checking them off as I get through, as I can fit them in. Theme music by T. Marie Vandelli was one that creeped me out. It was a thriller. It was, hey babe, I need you to sit here while I read the rest of this book because I don't want to read it at home in the dark by myself kind of book, which doesn't happen to me very often, but I read the audiobook of it and it was just, something about it just hit. Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This one I read with my husband, or at least around the same time. That way we could chat about it, and I enjoyed it. Mask of Shadows was a duology, which I did finish later in the year. I liked the first one better than the second one, but the second one wrapped up the series really well. I did it did work really well as a duology. I felt like the first one's pacing was a bit better, and I felt like it almost could have been a trilogy if they'd expanded some things and had a little bit more adventure in the second one. Maybe it would have been 2 short books. Maybe that's why they ended up going with duology, but I just like the first one better. Dangerous Assassin. I've already mentioned this one before, but I'm definitely going to be reading the next one in the new year. Accomplice to the Villain. Same thing. Hannah Colmayer has written a trilogy. Well, I thought it was a trilogy. It's actually going to be a series of 4 that I just adore. And I found out that this is actually based on other media from before, and it was adapted into books. And I'm like, fabulous. I'm going to have to go and track that down because I haven't had time to actually look into it. I just found out. But anyways, next up, Callie Hart's Quicksilver. I really liked this one. I did read the second one later in the year. And then City of Brass. I didn't know if I was going to love this one or not, but I ended up really liking it and having the next one, which I believe is City of Copper, something of Copper, is on my list for the next year. And I'm not sure how to say the last name, so I'm just going to skip that one so I don't embarrass myself. Apologies. And then Blood Over Bright Haven by Emma Wang. I have mentioned this one a million times at this point. This is like phenomenal. Absolutely loved it. Magic, that's the way it's written, and it's somehow magic meets science meets art. It's really good. And then you have the political side of it, and it all kind of goes well together, and the character building, phenomenal. So as you can probably tell, that is my September pick. October, The Vanishing by Wendy Webb is a sort of a thriller-ish. Then we get to Heartless Hunter, romantasy, part of, I believe it's a duology. I have the next one on my list. So if it's not a duology, then I will need to put the third one on my list as well. 50/50 is a thriller. I've mentioned this one before. It is opposing lawyers and their clients, and there are 4 different points of view in here, and you don't know who is who on the 2 clients. You can tell who is who on the lawyers because of what they're talking about, and one is a female and one is a male, so things you can obviously tell who they are as you're going through it, but you don't know which of the 2 sisters is which, so you don't know which one actually did it until the end. So it's kind of a mystery thriller. Fun. I liked it. It was an interesting sort of thought to have the points of view going back and forth with the mystery point of view of the 2. I thought it was just, it was a fun time. I like mysteries though. So, Cursed House by Del Sandine. I've mentioned this one before. The ending, I'm not sure. I feel like I know what the actual ending was supposed to be, and I don't want to. I'm going to put my head in the sand and say, nope, that was a dream. We'll see. But I did enjoy this book generally. Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451. I've read this one multiple times, but it was on my banned books list, so I checked it off this month, and it got 4 stars. Stranda by Sarah Goodwin. I did like this one. I've mentioned this one. I went into a bit of like a mini chat on the October wrap up about this book. Red Rising. Mentioned this one a few times as well. Plan on reading the next one next month. Circus Infinite. This one I really enjoyed. I had never heard of it or the author, I don't believe, until I was looking for that Her Kid prompt about Q's reviews, and this was on there. And so I read it, and it was lovely. I completely agreed. Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. This is the beginning of a series that I'm definitely going to continue reading. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I didn't love the first few chapters. I thought they were a little slow, but after the first few chapters, it definitely picked up, and it felt like it was just going. Ruin of Stars. This is that second part of the duology I mentioned just a little bit ago with... I want to say 2 months ago. It was either August or September. But Lindsay Miller's Ruin of Stars, this was a 4-star for me. I did enjoy it. And House of Sky and Breath, which was a Crescent City novel. I believe this is number 2. I put this one as a 4-star as well. So October, Daughter of No Worlds. November, Fault in Our Stars made me cry. It did, so it got added to my list. Night and the Moth by Rachel Gellig. I very much enjoyed this one. It's got gargoyles and magic and some romantasy vibes, things going on in there. It is definitely an interesting read. It's not for everyone, I don't think, but I did enjoy it a lot. Mask of Mirrors. This one was another one that I enjoyed more for the sort of political intrigue and trying to understand the characters, I think. Metal Slinger by Rachel Snyder. This is the first one of the series. I don't know how I'm going to feel about the next one, which I believe this is a duology. The ending made me mad. I've mentioned it already though, so I'm not going to go into it too much. And I know I've said either I've mentioned it in another video before, or I really, really liked it. But that's kind of obvious because the ones that I really like, I'm going to probably mention more in other videos. So hopefully that makes sense. And I don't want to spend all of your day going through stuff that you've probably already seen. So I will move right along. So we're already 21 minutes in. Until the End of the World, I'm going to be doing this next one in this series. It was very enjoyable. Thriller, apocalypse situation, zombies, if you're a zombie apocalypse person. Then you get to The Undead Fox of Deadwood Forest, which is a middle grade sort of discussion on death, but from the point of view of a almost magical undead fox and how he helps creatures on to the next part of their journey and how they can kind of choose their own path, and he just knows which way to guide them based on the things that they have enjoyed in life, and everything is sort of going great until it's kind of his turn and he doesn't realize it, and then he does, and that whole but what does that mean, how do I feel, that kind of thought. So I thought it was a good sort of discussion on that without getting too intense for that age group. I did enjoy it. Winter was the last of the Lunar Chronicles series by Marissa Mayer. I did enjoy it. It is the longest of them, so I want to say it's like double the length of some of them. Enjoyed it, 4 stars. Guild, the first of the Play to Prisoner series, which is on my list for next year. Edge of Collapse. This one I don't know if I'm going to get to the next one just because I have so many on my list, but I did really like it, and I feel like it could be one that I pick up and fly through if I have a little bit of extra time, rather than something that I'm going to be able to fit into a prompt, most likely. But essentially, you have the woman who escapes from being held hostage for years, and you have the man who just is coming from a tragic accident, which you can read about in the prequel to it. And he finds her and the dog and says he's going to help her to the next town, or the town where her husband and child are at. And it's a thriller because they're trying to get there in this kind of post, it's not apocalypse necessarily, it's an implied EMP. So there's a lot going on. So you've got like raiders and people who are just dangerous, plus they're also being hunted by the person who held her captive. So lots of action going on, and the next one I am curious to see where we're going to go based on the end. 13th Child, I believe, is a standalone by Aaron A. Craig. It is fantasy. Death is the godfather of the main character, and gets her when she's a young teen after she's been raised by another family, I believe like her cousins or something, and not in the best situation. And then he continues to raise her going forwards, but more like she raises herself, but he like puts things in place for her to become who he thinks she should be, and all the different things that happen in her life, and how she uses the gift that he gave her, and the life that she lives. It was good. Not my favorite of the list on here, but it was a 4-star. Axiom's End, sci-fi, Lindsay Ellis. Aliens, I've talked about this one before. 2 different sects of aliens, and they're not happy with each other, and they're on Earth, and you're trying to sort of understand what is humanity, but also how do we interact with creatures who don't have that same base to understand it. Because if you're not a human, you don't have the same ways to understand the world generally, because your brain doesn't work the same, your body doesn't work the same, you don't think the same, you don't talk the same. Like, it has a lot of, yes, political discussion in there, but in reality, it's just talking about more of what are we going to do when we find alien life out there, because they're not going to have any basis of understanding of our world or of anything about us. And what's a more realistic, I mean, it is still a book, a fiction book, but what's a more realistic outcome? And then the ending of this book, I'm hoping it leads into some more interesting discussions about interspecies relationships, not necessarily romantic relationships, just interspecies relation between the main characters and how that pans out. So I have this one on my list for next year as well. All right. So the November was Axiom's End, because you can tell I was chatting on that one for a bit. Then we get to December. This was a shorter month when it came to 4- and 5-star reads, though I did read a ton. I had a lot of 3-star books in December. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because most books end up being a 3 for me, but I didn't have a ton of like standout books, which is that 4s and 5 stars. So the first one was Kim Harrison's 3 Kinds of Lucky. It's the first one in the Shadow Age series. I'm waiting for the second one to come out. I don't believe it's out yet, but I will be continuing on with it. It's rather different than some of her other series, because yes, there is sort of like witchcraft and spells and things, but it's just the shadows and the way that the society is created is different than her other worlds, and it intrigues me. So I'm gonna be trying to jump in on that one when it comes out. Xenocide was a 4-star for me as well. It is a bit more intense, and I'll probably do a whole nother video on that one in general, so I'll skip that for now, but it was a 4-star read for me. Black Tide was the end of the Outcast novel series. 4-star, really enjoyed the series overall, but there are some triggers on it. It's not necessarily, yes, there is some romance elements here, but it is not a romantasy series, in my opinion. I think it is more of a fantasy / sci-fi series, because there are some sci-fi elements to it as well, that includes some romance elements. So it's not necessarily that the romance is the triggers, it's other things. There's genocide, there is deaths of children mentioned, and etc. So check that out before you take care of yourselves if that is not something you are in a place to read about. But the world was dark but interesting. I've said interesting a lot too, but if something catches my interest and I'm like, I want to like dive into this world, I don't necessarily want to live there, but I want to spend time here and understand it, it often will get to that 4-star level for me. All right, and then Brimstone, which is the second one by Callie Hart. This one was also phenomenal. I will likely do a video on the entire series at some point, because I believe this is only the second one, if my memory doesn't fail me. So once the series is finished, which that could be years, so maybe I won't. This is too new. I don't want to do any spoilers at all, because it is a fairly new book. So anyways, and then Wicked, Gregory Maguire. This one I'm almost done with. So to just completely honest, I'm not 100% done with it. I have a couple of hours left to finish, but it is a chunky book. And so far, I am definitely leaning towards 4-star. It is not like the movies or like the musical. Almost at all. I mean, they do have similarities. but they are not even necessarily the same people. And a lot of the book happens later, like not when they're just freshly out of school. Like they're in their 30s for a good chunk of the book. And yeah, Fiyero is a different character than he is portrayed, in my opinion, in the books. Like just who he is and how everyone perceives him generally is different. Shiz generally is also really different. It's a all-girls school, but it's right next to an all-boys school, and then it ends up becoming a combined school. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and that is different than the books. And this also has some rather dark elements as well. So don't pick this up thinking that you're going to basically be reliving the movies with a little bit more backstory. It is very different. Good, but very different. And it's definitely darker as well. Yep, I'll leave it at that. All right, so favorite of the month was Three Kinds of Lucky by Kim Harrison. All right, now we're going to go quickly down each one. So January, February, A Ship of Bones and Teeth, one out there. March and April, Once Upon a Broken Heart. May, June, The Golden Enclaves. July, August would be Trail of Lightning. September, October is Blood Over Brighthaven, which surprises no one. That was phenomenal. And then November, December, Axiom's End. All right, so first half of the year, A Ship of Bones and Teeth. Second half of the year, Blood Over Brighthaven. Now, these two books are completely different. Yes, they are both fantasy books, but they are not anywhere near the same. A Ship of Bones and Teeth is dark romance, sirens, yeah. And then you have Blood Over Brighthaven, which is witches and political discussions and intrigue. So both in the fantasy category, just different subgenres and very different books, but both really good. So my favorite of the year, probably surprise to no one, is Blood Over Brighthaven. But there were some really, really good books this year. And these are obviously just the books for each month. If you looked at like every phenomenal book and like made it so you had to compare them against each other, I still think Blood Over Brighthaven would have won, but I don't necessarily think that all of these books would have been the 12 that were there, because if I had to like compare, trying to think what we had for the first part of the book, say White Hot to Not My Type, I'd have been like, okay, well those are completely different. That maybe would have been, I don't even know. I think Not My Type still would have won. Anyway, I don't necessarily think that the order would have been this if we just did all of the books for the year and then turned it into a list of like the top 100 books I read this year, because I did read 430 something books this year. Well, 430 something pieces of literature. Some of them were novellas, some of them are short stories, etc. But there's a chunk. I also only chose books to win that I had never read before this year. And if I had chosen books that I had read before this year, that may have had some sway on it. And then I also, yeah, it's probably fine. You get what I'm saying. These are my top 12 because I chose per the monthly bracket rather than putting them all in order and choosing the top 12. So anyway, favorite for the year would have been Blood Over Brighthaven. No matter what, it was phenomenal. It had me angry. It had me intrigued. Phenomenal. I will be doing a full review on this one. So when it comes up, there will be spoilers on it. I'll put a note that there's going to be spoilers. I believe later this month is the plan to do the favorite of the year's review, and then I want to do a review of each of my favorite months for 2026. Do the do a video on review of my favorite for that month. At least that's the plan currently. Let me know what you think about it. And I've been jabbering on for 35 minutes, so I will say thank you so much for your time. Let me know what your favorite is. Did you agree with all of mine? Did you disagree with any of them? Did I miss out on some of your faves? Let me know, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!